Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are doing something a little bit different, and frankly, I think it's going to be incredibly useful for a very specific part of our audience.
Yeah, highly specific today.
Right, because if you are a professional planner, or even more specifically, if you are staring at a mountain of binders right now, trying to memorize the code of practice for your exams,
We feel your pain.
we really do. So this conversation is dedicated entirely to you.
That's right. We aren't just talking about, abstract theories of urban design today. We are getting right into the trenches of professional discipline.
Which is honestly fascinating, even if you aren't taking the test.
Oh, absolutely. We are treating this deep dive as a dedicated case study. It's a specific decision from the Ontario Professional Planners Institute, or OPPI.
And like I said, even if you aren't prepping for an exam, this story is, well, it's wild.
It really is.
It's got everything: complex business deals, heated arguments, accusations of betrayal, and a very, very blurry line between what makes someone a business partner versus a professional consultant.
The case is Sonoma Homes, Inc., Carmen Chiaravalle and Michael Chiaravalle versus Sergio Mancia.
Right. It's a perfect storm for an ethics case study.
It is. The decision was handed down on May 5, 2017, and honestly, it serves as a masterclass in understanding the OPPI professional code of practice.
So our mission today is to walk through the hearing panel's findings, section by section.
Exactly. We want to help you understand exactly where the line is drawn. So when you're sitting in that exam hall or just sitting in your office, you know exactly where the landmines are.
Okay, so let's set the stage here. Who are the actual players in this drama?
So on one side, we have the complainants. That's Sonoma Homes, Inc., and the Chiaravalles, Carmen and Michael.
Okay.
And on the other side, we have a member, Sergio Mancia, who is a professional planner. Now, usually this relationship is super simple, right? Client hires planner. But here, it was a totally tangled web.
Right, because Manchia wasn't just their planner.
Exactly. He was acting as the planning consultant for Sonoma Homes on a specific development in the Mewburn neighborhood.
So that's the professional bucket.
Right. But simultaneously, he was a business partner with the complainants in a completely separate venture, a company called Copper Creek Developments, Inc.
Okay, let's pause there because I feel like that context is vital.
Mhm.
He is their planner on Project A, but he is their business partner on Project B.
Yeah.
That just sounds like a recipe for a massive headache.
It certainly adds a huge layer of difficulty, and that dual relationship is really the catalyst for everything that goes wrong here.
Because the dispute didn't actually start with the planning work, did it?
No, it didn't. It started over a management fee in the private business, Copper Creek.
Ah, money. It is always money.
It usually is. And that private dispute spilled over into their professional relationship.
Naturally.
It led to a total deterioration of trust, a very heated phone call, which we will definitely get into later, and ultimately the termination of his planning retainer on October 27, 2011.
So the relationship completely implodes, and Sonoma Homes goes to the OPPI, and they file a complaint with just this laundry list of allegations.
A huge list.
But, and I think this is key for anyone listening and taking notes, the panel didn't find breaches on everything.
Correct. And for an exam candidate, understanding what is not a breach is just as important as understanding what is.
Right, it helps you map out the actual boundaries of professional liability.
Exactly. So let's start with part one, the non-breaches, specifically sections 2.1 and 2.2 of the code.
Okay, so section 2.1 covers the duty to impart independent professional opinion. And the accusation here seems pretty straightforward to me. If you are in business with the client, how can you possibly give independent advice? You literally have skin in the game.
That was exactly the argument they made. But the panel looked at the actual work product. They reviewed the planning applications Mancia submitted for the Sonoma project.
And what do they find?
The verdict was no breach.
Really?
Yeah. The panel found that despite the messy background relationship, his professional opinion itself wasn't compromised. The planning rationale actually stood on its own merits.
So the work was good, even if the relationship was a disaster.
Exactly. The quality of the output is what saved him on that specific count.
Okay, fair enough. But then we move to section 2.2, which is to work with integrity and professionalism. Now, based on the intro, I would have thought this one was a slam dunk for a breach.
You would think so.
Right. Because if you are fighting with your client over side business money, surely that impacts your professional integrity.
This is where it gets really nuanced.
Huh.
The panel ruled technically no breach on section 2.2.
Technically.
Yes. However, and this is a massive However, they did not let him off the hook completely. You really have to dig into the panel's commentary here.
They gave him a pretty stern warning, didn't they?
They absolutely did. The panel explicitly noted the difficulty arising from these multiple relationships. They pointed out that while there was actually a third-party planner for the Copper Creek business, the dispute from that private business is what poisoned the well for the professional planning work on the Sonoma project.
So what is the actual lesson here for the listener? Is the OPI saying it's fine to be business partners with your clients?
Definitely not. The lesson is that the onus is always on the planner. The panel said this case should serve as a major warning to all OPPI members.
Because it's a huge risk.
Right. It is inherently dangerous to mix business partnerships with independent planning services. Even if you don't technically breach Section 2.2, you are walking a tightrope without a net.
And if there's any role confusion or conflict, it is entirely on you.
Exactly. You have to manage that risk.
So it's not strictly illegal under the code, but it is high-risk behavior. Okay, let's move to Part 2, which covers confidentiality and values. That's Sections 2.6 and 2.7. Let's look at confidentiality first, because the timeline here is just fascinating.
Right, Section 2.6. The charge was that Mantia breached client confidentiality. So here is the fact pattern you need to know. On October 7, 2011,
While he's still technically working for Sonoma.
yes, while still working for them, Mantia accepts a retainer for a different client, LPF Reality Retail Inc.
LPF. And they weren't just random clients on the other side of town. They were neighbors.
Neighbors and essentially direct competitors. LPF's lands were near the Sonoma home site in that exact same U-Burn area.
Wow.
And eventually, LPF filed objections and appeals against the Sonoma plans. So the core accusation was, did Mantia use confidential info he learned from Sonoma to help LPF fight them?
I mean, that sounds incredibly damning. If I am Sonoma, I am absolutely thinking, you used my secrets to help the guy trying to block my entire development.
It looks terrible on paper, but here is where the timeline completely saves the member. The panel found no breach.
Walk us through exactly why. Because that sounds crazy.
It all comes down to when the information became public. LPF filed their objections in April 2013 and their appeals in June and July of 2013.
Okay.
But by that time, the Sonoma Homes applications had already been deemed complete by the municipality and approved.
Ah, so the file was completely open.
Exactly. The panel ruled that the scope and content of the Sonoma applications were public knowledge by that point. Any member of the public could have walked into City Hall and seen those exact plans.
Well-
Therefore, you cannot breach confidentiality on information that is already sitting on the public record.
That is such a crucial distinction for the exam. Just because you switch sides or work for a neighbor, it doesn't automatically mean you breach confidentiality if the info is already public.
Correct. But again, notice how dangerously close to the line this is. If he had used that info before it was public, we would be having a very different conversation today.
Absolutely. Okay, and quickly, what about Section 2.7, conflict of values?
This one was dismissed fairly quickly. The panel found no breach. There was simply no evidence that Mantia failed to inform the client of a conflict between their values and the code. It just wasn't a relevant factor in this specific fact pattern.
Okay, so far, Mantia is batting 1,000. 4 charges, 4 no breaches. He is surviving the tribunal. But here is where the story shifts dramatically. We were entering Part 3, the first major breach, Section 2.8.
Yes, this is the core issue for so many ethics cases. Conflict of interest. Section 2.8 requires full disclosure of possible conflicts of interest in a timely manner.
So let's go back to that specific date, October 7, 2011.
October 7. Mantia accepts a retainer for LPF, the neighbor. At that exact same moment, he is still retained by Sonoma Homes for development in the same area.
So he is literally working for 2 potential competitors on the same turf at the same time. He's trying to serve 2 masters.
Correct. And the failure here isn't necessarily that he took the work. Dual agency happens, but it has to be managed properly. The massive failure is that he didn't tell anyone.
Right.
The evidence showed no attempt by Mantia to formally or informally disclose to either party that he was working for both of them simultaneously.
That just seems like a massive oversight. But didn't he have a defense for this? I remember reading something about the IBI defense.
He did. Mantia worked for IBI Group, which is a massive firm, and he relied on an internal administrative process at his firm to check for conflicts.
Okay.
Essentially, he argued, my firm has a system for this. I put the names in the system didn't flag it as a conflict, so I thought I was good to go.
So basically the computer said it was okay.
Basically. And the panel was absolutely not buying it. This is a critical takeaway for every planner listening, especially if you work in a big corporate firm. The panel ruled that an internal firm process is entirely insufficient to satisfy your professional obligation.
So you cannot hide behind your company's admin team.
Never. The obligation belongs to the individual professional member. You must disclose the existence of two retainers for potentially competing developments.
And because he failed to do that personally, the verdict was a breach of Section 2.8.
Yes, a clear breach.
That is a huge light bulb moment. Personal responsibility trumps corporate procedure every time. If the system fails, it is still your license hanging on the wall.
And notice the requirement isn't just to casually mention it over coffee either.
Yeah.
The expectation is clear, documented disclosure.
Right. Okay, let's move to the second major breach. This is part 4. Dishonorable conduct, Section 3.5. Now, this section feels a lot less about paperwork and more about actual behavior.
It is. Section 3.5 prohibits conduct that casts doubt on professional competence or integrity, or reflects adversely on the profession. It is essentially the "don't make us look bad" clause.
And this brings us right back to that phone call we teased earlier, October 26, 2011.
The infamous phone call. The panel spent a lot of time on this. It was undisputed that the call happened between Manchia and one of the complainants.
And Manchia admitted it wasn't his finest hour. Right?
He did. He freely admitted the call was heated, regrettable, not a good conversation, and involved bad language.
Now, I have to play devil's advocate here for a second. Business gets heated. People yell. Developers and planners are often in these incredibly high-stress situations involving millions of dollars.
True.
Is losing your cool on a private phone call really a breach of professional ethics? Or are we just policing manners at this point?
In isolation, maybe, maybe not. But the panel looked at the much broader picture. It wasn't just that he yelled on the phone. It was an aggravating factor that really sealed the breach.
What was that?
When counsel for the complainants formally raised allegations about this lack of professionalism, Menchia provided no response whatsoever.
Total silence.
Silence. And worse, he made zero effort to apologize, despite being explicitly asked to do so.
Oh. So it wasn't just the bad language in the moment, it was the refusal to own it afterwards.
Precisely. The verdict was a breach of Section 3.5. The admission of bad language and the heated nature of the call, combined with that stubborn refusal to apologize, meant his conduct fell way below the reasonable level of professionalism required.
It reflected adversely on the integrity of the profession as a whole.
Exactly.
You know, it is really interesting that they cleared him on integrity in Section 2.2, but they nailed him on conduct in 3.5 for essentially the same series of events.
It is a fine line, but an incredibly important one for the exam. Section 2.2 was really more about the structural integrity of his planning work and the business relationships. Did the work stand up? Yes.
Right.
But Section 3.5 was about his personal behavior. You can produce good work, clearing 2.2, but still behave dishonorably, breaching 3.5.
That is definitely a distinction that could show up in a multiple choice question. Good planner, bad attitude.
Exactly. Composure is a professional currency. You have to maintain it.
Okay, so we have our two breaches. Section 2.8, conflict of interest, and Section 3.5, dishonorable conduct. What was the actual fallout? Let's talk Part 5, remedies and conclusion.
The penalty was twofold. First, regarding the conflict of interest under 2.8, Manchia was ordered to confirm to OPPI in writing, within 30 days, his obligation to ensure full written disclosure to clients and all future retainers regarding any possibility of conflicts.
So basically, he had to write a formal letter saying, I understand the rules and I promise to actually follow them.
Essentially, yes. It is a formal recommitment to the code of practice. The second part of the penalty was reporting. The decision was to be reported in summary and made available in full to all OPPI members.
Which is exactly why we are able to read it today. It's about public accountability.
Right. Professional discipline isn't just about punishing the member who made a mistake. It is about educating the entire membership. By publishing this, OPPI is telling every other planner out there, look at this case. Don't do this.
Okay, so let's recap the scorecard for our exam candidates listening right now. If you get a question based on this fact pattern, a planner with a side business, angry phone calls, competitor clients, how do you mark your answer sheet?
Okay, here is your cheat sheet. Section 2.1, independent opinion, no breach. The work itself was valid.
Got it.
Section 2.2, integrity. No breach, but a major warning about business entanglements.
Right.
Section 2.6, confidentiality. No breach because the info was already public knowledge by the time it was used.
Crucial timeline details.
Section 2.7, values, no breach.
Okay.
Then we hit the breaches. Section 2.8, conflict of interest, breach. Failure to disclose dual retainers in writing.
In writing being the key.
And finally, Section 3.5, dishonorable conduct.
Yeah.
Breach. A heated call combined with a refusal to apologize.
Perfect. That is crystal clear. Now, as we wrap up this deep dive, let's distill this into the absolute key takeaways. If you forget the section numbers entirely, what are the core principles you need to walk away with?
I think there are two really critical lessons here. Number one, transparency is non-negotiable. I cannot stress this enough. You cannot rely on your firm's administrative staff or some internal conflict check software to save you.
No passing the buck.
Exactly. If you are working for two parties that might even remotely be in conflict, you must disclose it. And you must disclose it in writing.
In writing is the key phrase there. If it is not written down, it didn't happen.
Exactly. And lesson number two, composure is professional currency. We all have bad days. We all have clients who drive us completely crazy. But a single heated phone call, especially when you use bad language, can be deemed a breach of the code.
And if you do lose your cool, which happens, just apologize.
Yes. The refusal to apologize was a major factor in the finding of dishonorable conduct.
It is the cover-up, or in this case, just the sheer stubbornness that gets you, not necessarily the original crime.
It is about accountability. Professionalism means owning your mistakes, even the emotional ones.
This has been such a useful walkthrough. It really brings the code of practice to life when you see it applied to a real-world mess like this.
It really does. It moves it from abstract rules on a page to real human behavior.
Before we sign off, I want to leave you with a provocative thought. Something to mull over as you head back to your study notes.
Let's hear it.
The panel cleared the member on integrity, Section 2.2, but convicted him on dishonorable conduct, Section 3.5, for the exact same series of events. It really invites you to consider, at what point does a bad business breakup officially cross the line into a professional ethics violation?
The line might be much thinner than you think.
Good luck with your studies, and thanks for listening to The Deep Dive.
Good luck, everyone.